This meeting of the Tyler ISD Board of Trustees is called to order. We do have a quorum. The meeting has been duly called and the notice of the meeting has been posted in the time and manner required. It does not appear that we have any public participation today. Am I correct on that? That is correct, sir. Okay. We'll go on to our continuous improvement and student outcomes portion of the meeting. We have a Texas Performance Reporting System and Result-Driven Accountability for 2021-2022 report.
Per the board monitoring calendar, this is the annual hearing and report for the TAPER. Dr. James Curitan, our Director of Assessment and Accountability, along with Dr. Gropel, one of our deputy superintendents, will be providing the report to the board. Again, this is an annual requirement. This is data that was gleaned from the 21-22 school year. We just got it tidied up from the state and given to us in December of '22. Is that right? We get this in December or November?
This was probably December that
Yeah.
we got it. It was in fact, it was released and then we found it and then we got the email about it. So I think it was December.
Yeah, so it lags a little bit since the school year's been 6 months complete or more, 7 months complete now. So we're going to turn it over to our subject matter experts to give us the presentation.
Well, good morning, Dr. Crawford and Board of Trustees. We'll take just a few minutes and work through some of our Texas performance reporting system results, as well as our results-driven accountability results. So just to get us started with the TPRS, just as a reminder, this is the old taper. So it used to be a large packet. It still is if we print it online, but it's largely now it's all online. But the goal is for them to just break down data a lot of different ways to observe any trends or anything unusual. It does report on STAR performance and growth, which we talked about several months ago, as well as attendance rates, dropout and graduation, and then CCMR, which is really important for our high schools and our district. So just to recap STAR, we did want to highlight where we outperformed this year relative to last year and where we kind of maintained, which is what the dashes indicate. Overall, it was a good year. We made a lot of progress on STAR, and this obviously helped us out with having the best rating we've had in 5 years of this new accountability system. So I just want to point that out. We were an 88 last year. We were almost an A, very close to an A. And it was the first year in a long time that we had 0 unacceptable or IR campuses. And then we only had 1 D overall. We did earn several distinctions, 17 campuses, earned a total of 49 distinctions. So that's a pretty solid number overall. We did this despite having a larger proportion of our students as being considered economically disadvantaged compared to the state. So it's a pretty significant accomplishment for last year. Here are just some numbers on dropout rates, graduation rates, and then our students relative to the state averages. So you can see our dropout rates for both 7th and 8th grade as well as high school. They're lower, much lower than the state. Our graduation rates for 4, 5, and 6 years are higher. Just to be clear, what a 5-year and a 6-year graduation rate is that's lagging, essentially going back an additional year. So if we go back to our class of 2019, and we say how many students graduated from that class, that cohort, in 2019, 2020, or 2021, it was almost 98% of the kids in that cohort. So you can see like our 5-year cohort, which would have been the class of 2020, 99% of them graduated by the time 2021 ended. The demographics at the bottom, the percent at risk, the percent ECODIS, as well as our emergent bilingual graduates. I just wanted to show you the graduation numbers outpace the state, and that's despite having a larger at-risk population, higher ECODIS, and a larger population of EBs relative to the state. For CCMR, we just want to touch on this real quick. You can see where the state average was last year and where we were. We've pretty consistently been around 70 to 73, 74% with our students in terms of CCMR. We also, the TPRS gives you a lot more breakdown of the CCMR metrics and college career, et cetera. But we wanted to just point out some of those that you've seen from Gary Brown's presentations. You can see what percent of our students got an associate degree through early college. And that's percent of the district, not percent of that campus. You can see the dual course credit number for our graduates outpace the states as well as our IBCs. And then our AP and our dual credit results, we're right there with the state or outpace them as well. So that's kind of a summary of TPRS. I think we'll go ahead and shift to RDA and then we can field questions from RDA. RDA is slightly different. This is results-driven accountability, so it's a combination of STAR and several other metrics, and it's really focused on those 3 groups that we put up there: bilingual ESL, special ed, and our other special populations. And it looks a little bit different. The way it's presented from the state is a little bit different than anything else that we look at. As of right now, they use these performance level metrics, and so they'll say you're a performance level 0 or 1 or 2, 3, 4 for each indicator. For each indicator that they evaluate. Performance level 0 is where we want to be. Performance level 4 is kind of the highest level of the highest level of intervention or being labeled for a specific indicator. So I'll show you a summary of those levels for each of the populations that we talked about. So here you can see performance level 0 is where we want to be. Performance level 4, that's where we're kind of the furthest away from where we need to be. For each population, the number in the box just tells you how many indicators we were evaluated on and what at each performance level. So for the majority of our groups, we're pretty much at a performance level 0 or 1. We did have a few changes in special ed. We did hit significant disproportionality with one indicator in performance level 3. If we average those, just to kind of get a comparison of where we were last year compared to this year, our bilingual ESL population, we actually declined overall in performance levels, so we improved as a whole there. For special ed, for our other special populations, we maintained essentially where we were last year. So even though we had a few indicators that may have gone up, we had some that went down as well. And we're still working to refine that.
So pause on that just a little bit. On that 1-6 over there in PL3 in special ed, just kind of maybe Dr. Gropel, Mr. Jones over there can kind of describe some of the disproportionality that caused that.
Specifically looking at out of placement for our special education students, African-American students in particular, as we work with principals, and we knew this data coming into this year, so it's not something that we got in December as we talked about with the data. It was not a data point that surprised us. As we looked at discipline placements and working with our administrative staffs on the campus to ensure that we're seeking out opportunities for our kids to have different placements or different discipline measures. One, so we don't have a continued disruption in a classroom and disrupt the learning environment for other students, but also looking at how we can best create a discipline management plan that aligns with that student's needs, redirects and corrects the behavior so that they can integrate themselves back into the learning environment additionally. So not a data point that we were surprised that we got with this data in December, but something that we've been working to address throughout the year.
So when you get a 6 on that, what is 6? Does that mean like different indicators in there yet dinged on? Is that the number of kids? I mean, what does 6 mean?
So we have essentially 6 indicators that are at performance level 3, but only one that we're at significant disproportionality, which is the one that Dr. Gropel just addressed. So
Right.
the other 5 indicators at a performance level 3, we're working to improve those, just the same as we are with the other indicator that's in those 6. So it's essentially a metric that measures the number of kids, for example, African-American special ed relative to all special ed that's white, Hispanic, Asian, et cetera. So all the other races. So it just depends on the indicator, but it goes across the board.
But discipline, right? We're not talking about performance in regard to that, is it?
Right, correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And y'all have explained this to me, Ms. Dykeman has explained it to us administratively, that it's not that many kids. It's just we have not gotten out of that.
Correct. We
hadn't had a year to where where they've asked us, we're just right at it.
Honestly, we've seen a decrease in the number. We just haven't gotten under that threshold to meet that number. So that number has continually come down over the past 3 years for us. I believe we were 0.2 points away from being off of that and being under that disproportionality level. So we're making gains as it pertains to coming off of that level. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Cureton, but the data for this is actually a year behind this, the reporting. So this would be 2020 data, and we feel like we'll be off of that disproportionality when we're reporting this to you a year from now because of the extreme lag in this data specifically.
But we may not. I mean, that's a behavior, and playing this game with TEA and the feds, I guess, too, right? This is driven there. And matching up with what y'all's local expectations are about student behavior inside the classrooms. We've got things in place, but when it boils down to it, the campus principal is the one is responsible for the assignment in Chapter 37 data. And we work with them, but they've got to work with their teachers and come up with solutions that are in line with the vision that we have, that not one student's going to disrupt the learning opportunities for the other 22 or 25 or whatever it's got. So not saying y'all are putting us between a rock and a hard place, because I think we're all in agreement that we want to keep our classrooms focused on the work of the classroom. It's just those solutions have to be acceptable per TEA about out-of-classroom assignment. That's really what we're trying to do, is play the game of what's acceptable there. And what could that be? Yeah.
This does include like an ISS placement or a out-of-school suspension placement. So even being in ISS is included into that number, because it's technically out of their traditional instructional placement.
Yeah, so what we used to have a bad habit of in education, I'm not saying we did that in Tyler, we did do that in Tyler, because heck, it's been a while since I was a high school principal, not too much, it's been a while since you've been one, and Mr. Jones as well. The easy thing to do is say for 3 days, you're gonna go home with mom or dad or auntie or whomever. That stuff we're trying not to do anymore.
Correct.
We want them to keep them on the campus. So there's like things like Smart ISS, which has some instructional components to it as well, along with traditional ISS. But whenever there is a need for, for a student, for whatever reason, to be removed from a classroom so they're not disruptive, there's not a whole lot of options there or creativity you can have that won't ding you when you do that. I will say this, I think some folks are not reporting it with fidelity as we are. So, and there's other people that are on this list as well. So we wanted to emphasize this because that's why that asterisk is right there, is because of some of the reasons we've got, that we've discussed at the dais here about discipline.
Okay, question. In regards to these special ed students, and you said primarily a lot of them are African American, are these repeat offenders, or does each time they count as one person, or is it every time they go, they count?
Every time they're out of a class.
Okay.
Whether or not they're the same student repeating the offenses, I couldn't answer that for you here. We'd have to get down to the micro level for that. But speaking of, in the macro terms, then yeah, every time that they're out, a student is out, whether it be the 8 of us up here, if we're identified as special education, it does ding us. It adds to the point. It's not repetitive per kid, it's the aggregate.
Okay.
Yeah, anytime I see disproportionality, that just is a big red flag. I mean, if we trust that our principals and our teachers are doing the best they can do, I'm not worried about disproportionality, because I think it's great for us to be creative in, don't just send them away from school. Maybe we have to be more creative and we have to find other places. But discipline is still discipline. And in my 20 years being here, when we got away from that, when we were more worried about some government stat than we were about control of our classroom, that's when things got chaotic in this district. So I've learned from kind of what happened before. So, we just need to make sure you can't guarantee outcomes are going to be the same. But we need to make sure we're doing the best we can for kids. And if that means more resources in different areas, let us know. But I'm not too worried about that.
Yeah, and we have committed some additional resources to help support this, and that's required by the federal government as a part of the being year 3 of the disproportionality. But we continue to emphasize to our principals and our teachers that an orderly classroom is the most important thing to us. And if we get dinged here, we'll do what we need to do. But there are, in many cases, 21 other kids in that classroom that deserve a quality educational experience, and one does not create a suffering.
What
for that.
campuses, just let the board know, as part of our discussion here, what campuses who were formerly hot spots for us have improved? Anything off the top of your head? Yes.
Well, Boulder has come down
Yeah.
Quite a bit with the use of Smart ISS, and just being cognizant of that disproportionality, and that is the thing, and being more creative and utilizing the additional resources. That was one campus that that had a high number before.
That's good.
But that
Good. That's good. Hey, there's a microphone right there if you want to bring it down there towards your end of the table.
Because ultimately, you're trying to get a change in behavior.
Right.
Not just a punishment.
Right.
So, yeah.
We're trying to change the behavior so it doesn't happen again.
And I'll say this, I do think the overall campus culture impacts the individual classroom environments on a campus. And I think you can see with some of those adjustments that we've made, either through leadership or some other resources that we deploy there, because resources are a pretty broad term. You'll see some improvements there. We know what the hot spots are, what they formerly were, where they used to be. Hey, Jones used to be a hot spot.
Yes.
And Dr. Crane's done a great job over there. The Tyler Metro Chambers Principal of the Year, by the way. She's done a great job over there. And that it can be done if you make it important, and at the same time, you improve the overall behavior of your campus and the outcomes on your campus. So, and they have not sacrificed the expectation of what a student should behave like in Tyler ISD by doing that, so.
And that's what I would be concerned about. I don't want educators to feel like they can't write up a student or do something for a student because of the disproportionality.
Oh, yeah.
Or even principals. So that would be my concern, that I don't want to write a child up because we don't want our school to
Yeah,
get
no,
paid.
no, our conversations are with the principal level, that teachers have the discretion to do what they need to do to help support kids. We do provide our teachers with training to help diffuse situations where they can, but ultimately, at the end of the day, if a kid's causing a disruption for the classroom, they're going to be disciplined appropriately by the staff on each campus.
Good.
And I feel like in regards to the repeat offenders, we need to definitely make sure that their parents are aware of the results and how it affects the school overall. In regards to situations like this, I think that could be part of the problem. I know at Boulter, there were a few of them that were repeat offenders. That was continuously a problem, so.
Duly noted.
I apologize if y'all already addressed this before I walked in, but can you describe SMART ISS?
Smart ISS is a similar setting as a traditional ISS, but we push in the accommodations, modifications, instructional support specifically for our special education students, whether it be a teacher coming in and providing the support or the services that student needs in that ISS setting, so that they're not without their traditional the accommodations, thank you, Rojo, that they would get in their traditional classroom.
Okay, do they come in intermittently, or are they there with them?
It's intermittently throughout the day.
Okay.
Yeah, you may wind up seeing a classroom teacher of record actually come into the classroom to provide some type of 10-minute instruction or support on whatever work that kid's doing at that time. And then that teacher might go back to their normal classrooms, not off their campus time. You know, it's not odd. I remember I was still a principal when we had a behavior unit. And they talked about how those behavior units that you had to be the teacher of record. If you were going to say they were the teacher of record in there, you had to be certified in every subject that kid was, if they were in there. Well, there's no way you're going to find somebody that's certified in every subject. So you started having to kind of have this thing to make TEA satisfied. And so that was early on. That was 16, 17 years ago. Mm-hmm. And we're still doing that. We've just labeled it.
That was my
something different
question.
now.
I'm saying,
Yeah.
so, okay.
Yeah.
So Smart ISS follows the special ed students, or is it for any student?
Well, I mean, we're going to encourage our teaching staff or any gen ed student to come in and provide supports in an ISS setting. We want to make sure that kid gets the instructional environment and the direct instruction where possible. We're just ensuring in that Smart ISS setting that kid's getting the accommodations, modifications, and services that they're afforded through their IEP.
Some kiddos that are not special education can handle an all-day assignment and an ISS for their behavior. If they skipped campus or something like that, you can give them their work for the day and they can just blow through it. They don't need that instructional support. Sometimes kiddos that aren't labeled special ed do need that instructional support. Special ed kids, they get put in there, it is going to happen. Mm-hmm. So,
Okay.
Case by case on other students.
Okay.
Oh,
Still got-
unpause.
Saved by
Well, we can wrap up pretty quick there. So we did receive our determination levels for each of those three groups, so special ed, bilingual, and other special populations. And essentially, we'll just continue to monitor, which, like Dr. Cropel said, we've known about and monitored these indicators. And then also, I think with special ed, we'll submit our strategic support plan to TEA. But beyond that, that's where we're at with the determination levels for each of those three groups.
We've
on
been
RDA.
here before.
Yes.
During my tenure, and we've hit the reset, and then we've kind of started back over again. So we're kind of right at that level to where we're either under or we're right over. Nothing significant either way.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any questions or comments?
Did we pull these groups because this is what we're expecting to be with our accountability system? To be looking at these groups?
So for RDA, results-driven accountability, the last few slides there, that is going to be incorporated into the district accountability, not in the calculation, but as a reporting mechanism for the next 5 years. We will expect to see it in accountability after that, but we don't know what that's going to look like at this point. So we just kind of gave you an overview of both TPRS and RDA. TPRS is much more in-depth, but we can certainly go through more indicators.
They're calling it TPRS now, but it's still the TAPER report. It's,
Yeah.
I don't know acronyms. Y'all know how we love acronyms. So it's the same thing that PBMAS used to be back in the day, Ms. Atkins, and indoctrination for all of us veteran educators that we are. And so it's just now got a new name to it. They're really going to start trying to blend all of it together. I will say that study this. I know that y'all got this packet for the weekend. You're getting this exposure to this day to day. If you've got any questions about it, feel free to call myself or any other subject matter expert on this. But there's some good stuff in there. There's some, if you didn't know historically what we were looking at, over the last 10 years or so, we were not competing at the region or the state level. And there's some areas where we actually surpassed the state or are right at the state. We're not significantly deficient and behind. Now, we'll say some of the math stuff, we outperformed the state significantly in the COVID year. And we knew that was going to happen because we brought our kids back and everybody else stayed at home. But it looks like the state, for the most part, has caught back up with Tyler. So in saying that, I think there's some ahas that go through there and maybe some circles on there that you might want to make to say, hey, what are we doing about this? Or, what do you think the cause of this was, or what's the plan? I mean, study it. It's really good data. Now that it's all finalized and past accountability, you can actually look at some numbers and say, we're doing a good job here. We need to do a better job here as we go forward.
Okay, well, thank you. On the agenda, there's also opportunity for public and board comments regarding the TAPER report, and there's an opportunity for a public hearing. I do not see anybody here from the public, so we will move on. We have a facilities rental and usage update.
Well, we're going to go ahead and leave that microphone down there by Mr. Jones and not make him come up to the table. But Mr. Jones, as Deputy Superintendent Chief of Staff, in his shop, he does have the facility usage facility rental and usage handbook in his shop. They've conducted their every 2-year review that's in board policy, I believe. Right. Anything of significance that you need to address the board with, Mr. Jones?
No, working very closely with communications, not communications, but with technology and Mr. Vogue over there. There was not a lot that needed to be done this time with the facilities rental handbook. We are finally where we want it to be. Everything is electronic now, and it's vetted through appropriate systems to make sure that whoever it is that's requesting the use of the facility has proper insurance, pay appropriate fees, and then it flows from there. Principals get first right of refusal if it's a event that's requested on their campus. That's in case we have it scheduled for an event or an activity per that campus. But we haven't had any issues over the last 2 years with the process, and We've stayed on top of it, only making it better by modifying where we can when necessary to ensure that they're in the armor. But we are ecstatic about the process, and we've not gotten any complaints from anyone utilizing the process to to get to that desired outcome of having the facilities rented. So there's not anything significant there as changes, other than the names of the people involved with the
What about
process.
prices?
Prices stayed pretty much the same. I mean,
Stable?
Mr. Vogue.
Stable?
They were stable. We didn't go with, the rising cost of lumber and any of the we stayed the course. And
325%?
Didn't pass any of those costs on over to the consumer or to our public. We didn't do that.
Yeah, the consumers have provided these facilities for us. I will say that we've had some discussions. Some of y'all have certain groups that want to rent, especially if they're going to use any type of technology, or we do require a custodial to be present no matter what. Sometimes the dates, and I know we don't have a whole lot of public here today, but at least it's going to be online, this workshop is, right? So they can hear the reasoning why that we decline some of these is we got to find custodians that want to work a Sunday afternoon, or an administrator that needs to be present depending upon the type of activity, or someone to run the sound booth depending upon what that is.
I
So
want to say, we don't turn over the use of the light booth and the sound equipment over to just anybody. We have to have district personnel there, and sometimes you run up on, we're on hiatus on one of our breaks, and, folks are traveling or whatever the case may be, and there may not be the availability at that time if it's not done well enough in advance to accommodate that. So that we
Yeah.
run into those conflicts every now and again.
Dr. Crawford, Mr. Jones, we did have adjustments to the rate for the high school theaters because after talking with our VPA director, Ms. O'Connell, she said those rates are insufficient to cover problems if we had problems with those facilities. And also she wanted to recognize the fact that since the last 2 years, those facilities are quite a bit upgraded from what they were previously. That's
Yeah.
the only adjustment.
but I don't think it's anything significant that we're pricing people out of using those facilities. We've had those used over time. And we work with, Texas College wants to use one for a graduation, or TJC needs to use our facility. We have some MOUs with them that I don't know if we even charge some of those.
Right.
TJC, we pretty much have an MOU with them on facility usage agreement that is transferable between both, where the fees are not, if we want to use theirs, and we've used their facilities, they don't charge us.
Right.
So, okay. And we do charge them to use Mike Carter Field on the baseball end.
One thing that I've noticed over the last few years, I think it's nice that we're able to have facilities open to the public for general use, even like ones that don't pay. And I don't know, I've noticed at Three Lakes several times that when there's groups out there that aren't, that haven't rented it and they're just using it, the language is so bad, you can't take your family out there to do anything. Do we have any rules posted at our facilities about, who can use, or, I don't know, like no profanity, or things like that? And I just,
It's a great question. I don't think there's anything that's posted on, especially on our outside venues like the tracks and fields of that. We need to address that to address decorum. I know we do that during actual contests. Prior to, we talk about fan decorum and what's expected there, but there are not any signs posted to say that you are expected to use good language and good behavior, and if you're not, then you will be asked to leave, and then we would have to get some police out there or whatever to address that. But that's a great idea. We need to make note of that, and
might be
we
something to
can
look at.
accommodate
Yeah.
that.
And same with trash, if you're going to
Absolutely.
use it, you got to pick up after yourself. But the
Right.
language was the one that, I just noticed a few times that you couldn't have your kids out there
And these are groups, you don't think that we're actually renting it, it's because out of the good graces of
They're grown up, they're grown people, like
us
in their
opening,
20s.
opening
you
the
know.
gates?
Yeah.
Okay, because we used to lock them.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
hate doing that, you know, I'm not to that point, because then people that want to go up there and walk or exercise don't get that benefit. I think we just have to have some rules and maybe from time to time, regulate them.
Okay.
I agree 100%. I think that we need to, as long as, make some type of notation about the conduct on the campus, in addition to making notation of anyone that we may talk to about that use of language and conduct on our properties that's not befitting. That should be documented and should be warned that they will not be able to use the facilities.
We've had a few of those over time, as pervasive as y'all are talking about it being. We need to get some signage up that gives us some. We always have the authority to do whatever we need to do about it.
Right.
But at least set the standards and the expectations there, so somebody can glance at that and understand if we do ask them to go.
Yeah.
We have
I
the
like
moral.
that
We have the
idea.
moral high ground.
And don't forget about the documentation. That's really key.
Sure.
Fully noted.
We can ban people.
That's right.
We can trespass them. We do that.
Yep.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, I'm glad that we finally, I know it's been kind of a years-long process, really, since Dr. Crawford got here and Greg Priest came on, that this facility, you know, we were kind of in the Stone Ages back then as far as facilities rental. So I'm glad we're finally where
We
feel
have
like we're at a
come
stable
a mighty
place.
long way.
In a lot of areas, so thank you for that. Okay, we will, unless anybody has any further comments or questions, we'll go ahead and go on to our safety and security update. Agent Millslagle, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you.
Board, Dr. Crawford, this is our January update on safety and security. A lot has happened in the last 6 months. We'll kind of go through this. Let me see here. TEA and the School Safety Center. A lot of new rules, a lot of stuff happening every day, and it changes about every week. The two guys in the back of the room have done an excellent job in checking the doors every week. And that will probably go on long after I'm gone, because this is what it's about, is keeping the students and staff safe. We had to update our emergency operations procedures with a template from TEA. They're getting more involved in school safety in conjunction with the School Safety Center. So we had to rewrite that down from 60 pages to about 16. They made us update our active shooter policy along with the active threat, any kind of threat policy for the district. Coming down the road, we're hearing hazmat. We already have that in place, pipelines, train derailments, things like that. So you may see that, and that gets approved at our quarterly meetings. It gets run by, but it's all done in new templates. So the work that was done a couple years ago, we just cut and paste, and it's a lot shorter, so it makes it a lot easier. On December the 7th, about 9:30 in the morning, we were notified that the intruder audits were happening. The first one occurred at Early College. We passed with flying colors. They come in and they attempt to make entry in 3 doors. When he was done there, he called Dave and Peter and myself and said, "All right, we're going to Rice." So we went to Rice, and he did the same thing there, and we passed, which is wonderful. Many schools are not passing for a number of reasons. Number one reason is propping of doors open. They're just propping them open. They don't learn. So this next week, we're on notice. 10 campuses are going to be attempted to get into, and that starts next Tuesday, and it should finish by Friday. He likes to do about 2 or 3 a school. The one good thing we did is when he showed up, we gave him our spreadsheet for the weekly door audits, and I think that really helped in this intruder audit. He was impressed by that. We had our meeting back in October where we went over some of the EOP policies. We'll have one coming up by or in April, tentatively. The outside people come in, so we'll be presenting new things that have come up from TEA and the School Safety Center. In October, we did something unique. We allowed the fire marshal to do unannounced fire inspections. He came in through back doors with us and he pulled the fire alarms. Usually he announces, comes through the front door. We just did it a little different this time, and I think that will continue. Our principals did an excellent job. Everybody they beat and exceeded anything that I'd seen before, because they didn't know what it was. No
Those
one
are really
was-
popular too.
Yeah, they didn't like it a lot, so I had to explain it, but they did, folks, they did a great job, and that's what it's all
I'm
about.
surprised y'all didn't hear anything,
Yeah.
because I did.
I did too. But the bottom line is they performed. Our students performed, our staff performed, and I couldn't be more proud of them for doing that. Been working with the city of Tyler in getting some additional school zones at Legacy, because it stops before you go down Donnybrook and turn in. So they're going to extend that down to Shiloh Road and then extend around Shiloh Road to Red Raider Drive. That is a procedure that goes through the traffic board and then ultimately an ordinance through the city of Tyler. So we're working on that. We're still working with the city and TxDOT on Tyler High and crossing the loop there. That is just a long, long process, but we hit them up as often as we can. The neat thing that you folks did is authorize additional personnel for the police department. Happy to report we have 28 officers on board right now, with 5 more in the process. Chief Brown has done an excellent job in recruiting officers. We've gotten a whole bunch from Tyler PD and Smith County. And the good thing is, most of us know them. We've worked with them for years. In fact, one of the guys said to me, I wish I'd have done this 5 years ago. Absolutely loves it.
So I have a question. So that
Yes.
puts, we'll have a team of officers of 32.
Yes.
Or 33. So will that make the Tyler ISD police force, I mean,
Third largest in Smith County.
third largest in Smith County?
Yeah.
Okay, I was wondering.
And we'll have an officer at every campus.
Yeah.
So they're not sharing like the folks that were at a middle school, we're covering elementary schools. We'll have one at each campus, so they'll get to know that campus. They're also assisting Dave, Peter, and myself in checking of the doors, because that is the number one priority by TEA.
I would assume by the time we're fully staffed, not only with the police department, but with your department as well, because we've got it budgeted to add 2 more deputies as well. So that'll put us at 36 or 37 or so. We'll be obviously still third largest in the county, and then probably one of the top 10 in East Texas, more than likely. So we're very fortunate budgetarily and resourcefully as far as personnel goes, the individuals as well.
On the door checks.
Yes.
Do they give you enough time to get kids in and school being done? Or do they do those like when school's being like 8 a.m. or whatever?
They start about 9:30 because we have times in which kids come into school and you can't keep somebody there 100% of the time when they're coming in off the buses and things
Right.
like that. They understand that. They're looking to see if at 9:30, 10 o'clock, a door's propped open, things like that. The things that they've found are students holding the doors open. We have cameras on those, notified administrators of these things. They've had students in other districts put pencils in the door so they could get out to their car to do whatever, mostly vaping in the cars. They'll get written up for that. And if we get written up for something like that, I'll have to present that to the board in executive session. And you've seen some don't do it in executive session and it meets national media that X, Y, and Z happened. Hopefully it will not. And our staff is really good at keeping an eye on these things. The real good thing that came out of all of this is what's called the TEA School Safety Standards Formula Grant. And it's based on the number of students in a district, and we hit $821,000. So prior to February 17th, I will be getting with Mr. Loper, Ms. Russell, and we'll submit the E-grant. There's 5 different areas that they focus in on. The first one is doors, doors, and doors. So we can buy hardware. We've found in these door checks, much of our hardware is expiring. It's at the end of its life. So we've spent thousands of dollars replacing door handles, crash bars, things like that. We're adding the actuators on the doors. That really helps with TEA. They like that. But it's been a battle. We've added 25 total at the high schools, 100 more to go. So we're in the middle of that project. It will also allow us to have panic devices on the phones of our staff. So if there is an emergency from the superintendent's office to our office to the PD, we can put that out to the staff, whether it's a tornado warning, things like that, or an active shooter. That's going to be required. Once you get through the doors, the film, and they used to call it bullet-resistant film, now it's impact-resistant. They've changed it, the wording of that. We'll be doing that around all of windows that you can get through. So any ground-level window up to 8 feet will be filmed and caulked, and that's a substantial amount of money. We've already spent, in the last 3 years, about $144,000. So I'm imagining we're going to double or triple that in this new grant. It is for 3 years, and if I get through the doors, the windows, the panic devices, we're then allowed to buy two-way radios and potentially metal detectors. Metal detectors are not required as I sit here today, but I think it's coming. I was at a meeting of folks like myself and others at Region 7, and we met with the grant writers and the number 2 person in TEA. John Scott is the new chief of safety for the state. He's been to Tyler. We drove him around for a couple hours, the superintendent, myself, Mr. Loper, and Chief Brown, and he got to kind of see firsthand how we operate. So his number 2 spent about an hour with 30 of us telling us what's coming down the road. These are minimum standards, but they may be required 3 years down the road.
By the state?
By the state, yes.
Remember, your lieutenant governor, that was the thing after Santa Fe, metal detectors. So
we will see where that goes.
retrofit the facility. We've already looked at some, because we do not want to junk up our schools, your facilities, with these things. Plus, logistically speaking, Mr. Jones and I can attest to working those things, and for them to be accurate, not just some optic out there for the community or public. It's a whole different level of management. And there are some things that y'all walk through when you go to a sporting event, or even when you go through the airport, that you don't even know you're walking through, that we could potentially look at. But it's going to take a little bit of money, and it's going to take a lot of administrative minutia to be able to logistically make these things happen, if it gets to that point.
Yeah, we brought that up to TEA, that it takes a number of administrators to operate these metal detectors, and you're going to line up people for an hour to get into a school. And so they're looking at that, but that's potential down the road once this grant gets funded.
Yeah, I think in the next legislative session, which has already begun, you're going to see some law that's written, that some of it's going to help us, and they've had us at the table since last May, that there's going to be some things done that make sense, and then there's going to be some other stuff that's going to be optically pleasing for the base. And so whatever side that is, and so be aware that some of that stuff that we're going to be embarking on is that. I also think it's going to wind up being included in your TPRS, or whatever they're going to call the accountability system down the road. I do think that you're going to get school safety audits, and I think that's okay. Heck, that's stuff we can excel at.
Yeah.
You know, keeping buildings secure versus the science of reading. There's certainly things that we can do. We're doing it right now, so.
Things that we've done in the past 6 months, safety film has been installed at Tyler High on the inside. It's frosted, so you really can't see through all the windows there. Well, there'll be some more of that coming. Fencing has been installed at Hubbard, and that's temporary, but that is, I've got to learn about scalable versus non-scalable fencing and all sorts of craziness, and that changes all the times. changes weekly. So now we can have a 6-foot chain link fence if you flip it upside down so the points go on the top like almost razor wire. Or use the ornamental 6-foot fence with the stop. Spires, yeah. So it's very expensive, so that's part of it that we can spend money on out of the grant, so it's not coming out of the general fund. The door alarms on the campuses, we have 25. There's 100 that are at the bus barn right now waiting to be installed. That has been delayed a little bit because of the bus cameras. And then
These are the, let me refresh their memory. These are the door annunciators that y'all approved early
Yeah.
in the summer. And we're just now getting to the point to where we can actually install the things. Thank goodness this was not an I mean, it is emergency, but, man, we've had vendor issues, some health stuff with the vendor, and then we've also had supply stuff as well. And same thing with bus cameras on the upgrades of those. I'm just being fully transparent here, not trying to throw anyone under the bus. It has been disappointing in the response. And it's pervasive everywhere. We knew supply chain was going to be an issue. These folks that, the Sword, I'm going to call it the door and lock company,
Yes.
they're getting hit on by White House and Bullard and
Everybody.
Lindell and everybody. And we were first in line, so we've gotten a lot of that while they're waiting for supply stuff and installation opportunities as well. So I wanted to, on the door annunciators, because that's a big deal for me, was having that alarm go off when the door opens. We're a little behind on that because we don't install that. We rely upon a vendor.
So they do work great. It does cause some harm in the classroom because somebody's got to go out and take a look at it, but we've set it so it'll go off after so many seconds, so it's not automatic. And the kids are starting to learn, hey, that's going off. So hopefully that will be done here shortly. I met with the vendor that also has the bus cameras. We had a meeting with Mr. Baggert and his team, and so they're also upgrading that. And then IT is adding some access points so that video can be downloaded not only at the bus barn and at the CTC when the buses are parked there, but at Legacy and Tyler High. And that goes into effect this week. Crisis Go assessments, we're getting a lot of those in. The age group on the assessments, the bullying has gotten lower and lower since I've been before you guys the last 3 years. We're getting them second, third graders, the parents are sending them in, even the kids are using it. So that's been a success, and kudos to Lori Anderson and Gina Dykeman's crew for addressing those. Things that are happening, I'm attending more training on the TEA grant, make sure we do it right, so we don't have to go back and do an amendment. We're getting an additional police car. We are adding boxes that have emergency equipment on all of our campuses. And that includes entry tools, that includes stop the bleed kits, and bullet shields. So in case, God forbid, we have to use those, they're readily available. The Bonner Gate project will get started in about 2 weeks on the north side of Bonner. They're going to enclose that area because we have too many homeless people deciding to come up there and spend the night. So that will be done. Dr. Crawford met with Mr. Loper and myself to upgrade the lighting at Rose Stadium and also Mike Carter Field. So that's coming down the road.
So not the playing surface.
No.
That might be another conversation for another day.
Parking lots.
Yes, parking lots and behind the concession area, Makeout Alley. We want floodlights, not just, I can't remember what Tim calls them, but we're going to try to light it up. I mean, it is just too dark back there. And we were cool when we did the renovation with these nice little LED space lighting, but we want to light it up with, think Hogan's Heroes with, spotlights going around everywhere. We need to light that place up. It's pretty awfully dark back there.
It is.
Invites a lot of shenanigans.
And hopefully, the Harvey Hall will be completed. We'll get a little bit more ambient lighting off their parking lots, but that's to be seen. And last but not least,
Poles.
what's that?
We're gonna put in poles actually in the west parking lot.
We're looking at that, yes, sir.
We're studying it. Yes, sir.
So we can get with the city and Encore down Lions Drive back there. So we might be able to use those and facing where, UPS makes their parking lot up there. And the handicap parking area also flooding back toward the stadium itself. Last but not least, June the 1st, I will be meeting with Region 7, and Chief Scott will be there to talk to us about the future of school safety in the state of Texas. And if you got any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for Agent Millslagle?
Just to comment in regards to, I think that, Tyler ISD has always been very aggressive, and I think the move to hire Mr. Slagle and the transitions we made in our security department over the past few years has been excellent. We were ahead of the game, I do believe. One of the things I always be concerned about, though, when we have large growth, is making sure that we have adequate job descriptions for these individuals that's on the campus at this time, making sure that they understand their responsibilities. With this growth and the additional responsibilities that you have as far as safety on the campuses, I don't know if they understand or if you're utilizing them to the full capacity of helping with some of these checks and monitoring that's required from the state level. So I think the comment is making sure that we have adequate job descriptions to make sure that that the employees know exactly what their responsibilities are.
Yes, and they do. I'm working with Chief Daly on this.
I felt like you
improving,
did, but I wanted
Nope.
to just make sure, because sometimes that's a problem when you have rapid growth and the job description kind of fall by the wayside. But
Understood.
yeah.
Let me clarify, job descriptions with police officers or our safety and security folks or hall monitors or staff?
I think it would be all of the above, making
Okay.
sure as much transition we've gone through the past 2 years or so, making sure that everybody understands their various responsibilities, and if there's been any changes, making sure that they understand what their job responsibilities are at this point.
Okay.
And I know that we have added a number of officers that we didn't have. So,
Sure.
we have more people, which means more security, which is great. But we want to make sure that those people understand their responsibility as well.
Sure. Yeah, one comment on that is there is statute, and police officers being police officers love to read it. There is statute about a school police officer and their responsibilities. We're clear up front when we hire them now that when you work for us, we don't live by that. It is about securing our schools. It is about interacting with our students to have relationships with them. You don't just stand off to the side, because what we used to hear, and we're getting away from this, is as soon as a student uses a profane word to a police officer, thou shalt be issued a citation. We know we've got a problem with profanity. It's the way society is right now. But the police officers we're hiring right now understand there needs to be intent beside it. And because we see them as an extension of administration in a lot of ways. And I don't go and write a kid up every time I hear them use a profane word in my direction. I don't like it, and I try to address it. But then when it becomes aggressive and then after that, then it becomes a discipline issue or a penal issue. So I think that's one of the things you're probably describing, is because they haven't been as engaged with the student body, because they've sat back with their hands back saying, man, if I get too close, one of them's going to cuss me, and therefore I must issue a ticket. Now, we want to make sure we respect the law and order and or law enforcement, and we want law and order. So there's a balance there, and we're constantly working with our police officers on that.
And not to go too far down this rabbit hole, but as I'm thinking about some of the great stories, and this is actually on the opposite end of what you're bringing up. People need to know their roles and responsibilities. That's an expectation. However, in some instances, some of the best best acts of humanity that you'll ever see is maybe somebody helping change a tire or somebody that's going above and beyond. And hopefully we're hiring those type of people that just know how to do the right thing in certain situations and not say, well, that's not in my job description. So, yeah, I had to say that.
Yeah, specifically speaking, one comes to mind right now, and I'll say it publicly, Jerry Fonville, i.e., y'all may know him as, the kids refer to him as RoboCop. I refer to him as Whitesnake because he used to be in an 80s band and his hair used to be long. You know, he has a gift, and a lot of that might have been that he worked with DPD and he had Pleasant Grove as one of his responsibilities. He has a gift, and that's the model of behavior from our school resource officers, that they enjoy working the basketball games or the football games. They do what we ask them to do, and they do it without being aggressive, but they still get the job done. And they don't wear their emotions on their sleeves, but when it is time to turn it on, they turn it on. So that act of service and that understanding of his job description of what we want him to do, that's the type of folks that we want to hire as well. So I appreciate both of y'all's comments from both ends of what our expectations are, and then just doing the right thing. So,
And I'll just say thanks, Agent Mills-Legel. You guys have done so much great work, and as a parent with kids in our schools, it's really appreciated, and it doesn't go unnoticed, for sure. You guys are doing great work, and I appreciate all you're doing.
Thank you very much.
Yep, I
Appreciate
can
it.
tell story after story about times I've been on campuses and just felt the presence and know that our kids are safe. And that's, personal experiences, like when I had to go in another door. I dropped Van off for training every morning. Well, I had to go through a door where a lot of students were going in at that time, and I got stopped by a monitor. Like, hey, man, I have my badge, but what are you doing here? Those little things, I know, okay, he's doing his job, and it made me feel good about the safety of our kids. So absolutely, Mr. Martinez. Likewise, y'all are doing a great job, so let's keep it up.
Thanks again, and we will keep it up.
Maybe they profiled you because of your hair.
They might have. It was a little shorter back then, but they could have. They could have. I have been profiled a time or two. Specifically in Noonday, Texas, when I got pulled over one time. Okay, what do we have next on this agenda? We have to consider the approval of local policy CO. I think it had to do with food services.
it did. We tabled this from the last board meeting and said we'd bring it back to you. Gina sent you an explanation in your email. What's that? What's that?
Dr. Gropel did in the packet.
Dr. Gropel did in the packet for your reading on that. If you have any questions about that, it has to do with food service and the forgiveness of lunches, of deficient account balances. And off the tip of my tongue, I couldn't remember. We talked about it. I couldn't remember what it was at the last board meeting, so it forced us to table it and bring it back another time. And that is, Dr. Gropel, you want to explain it just for public reasons?
Basically, you won't see the elementary listed because all of our campuses provide free lunch for all students. So there's no need for a student to have the ability to charge because everything's free for them based off of the changes in law from the federal government.
And the reason we had tabled it is because we didn't see elementary on there. Somebody had questions, so we just came back to it.
So,
That's
a
pretty
little
much it.
backstory. After the meeting, they all looked at me and goes, "What do you table it for? Why'd you even recommend it?" I was like, man, I could not remember what that policy was. And I didn't ask you. I don't know. Why did I not ask y'all? I don't even remember. We just went through and tabled it because we kind of asked about it. And I'd forgotten completely what it was. I was like, it was such an easy answer. Elementary kids get their lunches paid for. So sorry about that, y'all.
Yeah, it's okay. Okay, well, I'll go ahead and entertain a motion on that item.
I move that we approve the update.
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it, the motion carries. Okay, now we will go into executive session.
Before we go.
Yes,
Okay, ma'am.
yes.
The performance, star performance data that we got, and few things really upset me, because I'm one of those people that don't allow things to upset me. And unfortunately, it does. When I look at the report and looking at the results and the performance of the African-American students in particular, I guess because I'm African-American, but it should be anyone that has a performance of this rate. And I use the analogy. If we have three individuals, say Andy, Aaron, and myself, we all have expectations that's equally for each one of those individuals. I think that if Andy was the A student and Aaron was the B student and I was the C student and my expectation for those individuals are all A's, I would be real concerned when Aaron and Artist is not meeting those expectations. So, and that's where I am when I look at this report. I see African Americans, Hispanics, and whites, and traditionally, the African Americans are always behind. The Hispanics are kind of in the middle, and the whites are in the lead. I think that somehow we have to look and concentrate our efforts on getting the African American group, since that tend to be the lower group, up to that expectation. I know that some things are beyond our capacity, but I'm very reassured that TISD has adequate staff. I support it. I support the staff. I think they do an excellent job. And I think that somehow we have to look outside the box. Traditionally, not only in Tyler, TISD, but in the state, we see the same similar numbers. And it's a problem to me, and I don't know why. I don't know if it can't be all family. It has to be something else that affects these numbers and the results of these tests that makes a difference. And I think that we, as a district, somehow should kind of take the lead on this, because we are a premier district from my standpoint. We have adequate staff, we have people, we have resources. We have to bring about a change in these numbers. My goal for TISD is to be an A district. We know with the challenges in change and STAR coming up, that it's likely that we may not get that within the next year or so because of the projections of the results of the STAR exams. But I think that we are going to have to look at different ways of reaching the African American students and getting those grades up, because if we can affect those grades, we can be an A district. And somehow we have continued not looking outside the box, I think. And I think that we got some creative things that's coming on with Texas Tech, the incentive programs that we have. I think all those things are great, but we have to continually look for ways to reach these students and get them up to where they need to be. Individually, if we had these three students that I talked about, Andy, Aaron, and myself, in our individual families, and we wanted them all to succeed, we put resources on the persons that have the difficulties. We get tutors. We do whatever we need to do to get them up to where they need to be in your individual families. So, and I see this as a family situation when we talk about our students within the district. And I think that we need to be looking at it from that perspective and somehow looking at ways that we can get, say myself in that analogy, up to where I need to be so that I can help the overall expectations for the district achieve what we need to achieve and what we're very capable of achieving. But I think it's going to require some very creative things. And I think that we have the people that can do that. But I guess I'm just anxious for it to happen. So it really bothers me from that perspective. So I'm just encouraging the staff to look outside the box, look for any ways that we can possibly make a difference in these scores. I will do whatever I can to make a difference, and I'm trying to do that within the community, and we'll continue to do that. But it's going to take all of us working and seeing it as a significant problem as far as the overall rating for our district. Otherwise, we're not going to ever get there. We talked about the magnet programs that we implemented, which were great programs. I love magnet programs. I think we need them. But that kind of resulted in the problem that we had at Dogan. But it was a great opportunity for those kids to leave and go to another program, a magnet program, where they could excel. But we have to do things that's going to make a difference without a school closing like Dogan did. And I think it's going to require us looking outside the box and not looking at tradition, but looking at other creative ways to get where we need to be with these scores. So I just wanted to say that. It bothers me a whole lot, and I'm really concerned about it. And I'll do whatever I can to make a difference in trying to achieve better scoring for our African-American students.
Okay, duly noted, and I share your frustration and echo your sentiments. And I know that we will do our best to get those scores up. I know that we try, and that it's just, something that we put a lot of effort and resources into. But I share, I get it, man. I understand. So without any further comment, we'll go.
Just be noted that he's not the only one that's concerned. Let's just make that perfectly clear.
I'm a lot more outspoken.
No,
Let me make that perfectly clear. I think
Yeah.
all of us are concerned because this is our school district.
absolutely. And we want every kid to do good.
Right.
Okay, well, we will go ahead and go into executive session then. Thank you.